Welcome back, Generals. This is Doug with 2 Plus Tough, and we're going through the Scourge of Ghyran rule editions that are coming out for the new GHB and this whole season of warfare set in, of course, Ghyran. Games Workshop was kind enough to let me see the rules in advance, but I can't screen share it with you. So as they are coming out on Warhammer Community, I'm going to be kind of having these little simple videos that kind of just go through the rules one by one. So I'll read them to you if you're somebody who prefers to listen to things or has a job where you can't stop and read the article, and just have a little lighthearted discussion about it. And today, of course, we are talking about the Stormcast Eternals, which you knew was going to be Skaven or Stormcast on day 1 or 2, right? They're the two parts of the starter set, had to be these guys. This is mostly an audio experience, so I'll have a slideshow just to keep my thoughts in line, but go ahead and just tune out, keep on painting, driving, whatever you're doing, and let's talk about what is going on with the Stormcast Eternals in the Scourge of Ghyran. Now, as this is always a great way to on-ramp new players, I start with a little lore introduction. The Stormcast Eternals are the lightning paladins of the forces of order, the good guys. Sigmar, the titular god that is the game is based around, is sort of a deity of the magic of heavens. So he's like lightning and storms and that kind of stuff. And he essentially takes warriors that are near death and elevates them, infuses his godlike power into them, elevating them to demigods that when they die, they are reborn and recast into lightning, and they just keep fighting over and over and over again. A big theme of this current edition is how that action of dying and being reborn has a degrading effect upon the soul, which frankly leads to some really cool story ideas. On the table, things have always, I would say, played fairly like they do with the lore. By that I mean you're going to have a much more elite army, fewer troops on the table, but those troops typically have pretty good stat lines. One of the things that I used to tell people, at least for first and second edition, is there's a lot of factions that have like buffs and stuff like that, and the Stormcast do, of course. But I tell people, like, you know, Liberators and stuff, kind of think of them as pre-buffed. They don't have as many working levers as, say, the Blades of Khorne did at their worst. There's one or two synergies or something like that, and that's kind of largely, I would say, vaguely, how the army has remained. That they are independently quality models that can stand up, and while there are ways to interplay them with synergies, spells, that kind of stuff, they're actually really good just as standard units. Historically, they've had some of the best shooting in the game, thanks to long strikes, something like that, and their ability to project mortal wound damage out far. From what I can tell, though, this edition, it seems like Reclusians and Prosecutors, both reinforced, seem to be the flavor of the day when it comes to durability and the ability to like do decisive things on the table. So moving over to our GHB rules for 2026, what did they get? Well, first of all, they got some heroic traits, and I will go through these really quickly here. The first one is Legendary Tenacity. The first time this unit would be destroyed, before removing it from play, roll a dice. On a 3-up, this unit is not destroyed, and any remaining damage points inflicted on it have no effect. Then, heal D3 to this unit. As far as heroic traits go, I actually adore that one quite a bit. I was never really enthused by the ones inside the Stormcast Eternals battle tome proper, but this is a highly thematic thing. Your hero just coming back for that one little death blow. This is Gardas on the verge of death having one last hurrah to be able to blow up the realm gate or something like that. You know, those kind of cool story moments. The second one here is called Hour of Glory. This unit can be picked to use the Their Finest Hour ability, even if it's already used it in this battle. In addition, when this unit is picked to use Their Finest Hour, add 5 to its control score for the rest of the turn. This is fantastic, and I absolutely adore it. Their Finest Hour is one of my favorite just general abilities, just because it really, I don't know, in my mind, as a more of a narrative player, but even as a more trying to win the game, it really does seem to pull the focus of the game there. Right? Something cool is going to happen here because you've already invested the ability to do Their Finest Hour in them. It's like, this fight's going to be rad. If you have that on a hero who, say, maybe is riding a giant dragon or something like that, because it's just a heroic trait and there's no restrictions on who can use it. Obviously, besides the general ones of it can't be a named character, but you know what I mean? Like, think about it, Stormcast players. Who would really love to have +5 control, +1 to their saves, and I think +1 to wound, right? That's what that one is. Like, it's crazy good. And then lastly, we have Intense Piety. Pick a visible enemy priest or wizard within 18 inches of this to be a target. Roll a dice, and on a 3-up, subtract 1 from casting rolls and chanting rolls from the target for the rest of the turn. I'm sorry, until the start of your next turn, which is an important distinction. And that one's fine. Like, I don't think of many cinematic moments that are well represented by only a -1. If it was like -3 and it could like debilitate a Nagash or something like that, and even if it was once per game, I might even look at it. This, I'm not super impressed with. I would much rather, I'd say, go for the 2 passive abilities of Legendary Tenacity and Hour of Glory to add a little spice to my tabletop. However, if you know of a particular setup, synergy, or interaction that's happening on the table where that -1 would be valuable, please let me know in the comments down below. Next, the Stormcast gets some artifacts of power. We have 3 here. The first one is the Banner of Sigmar. Once per battle in your hero phase, pick an objective within 18 inches of this unit to be the target. Until the start of your next turn, your opponent cannot control the target objective while they have no units contesting it. This is a wonderful ability for a small army. So what that essentially means is your opponent has to keep somebody on an objective at all times. Otherwise, you can steal it from them. Not steal it in the sense that you now control it. It's not an auto control thing, but you can steal it from their victory point pool. When you consider that most of the missions are, have 1, have 2, have more, something like that, this becomes very good. Especially for a faction where you have so few units, it helps to be able to force your opponent to keep their units pinned on objectives, even if you're not near them. So I find that one to be highly interesting. The second one here is the Sigil of Morda. Once per turn, it's reaction, and it's when your opponent has declared a command or a rampage ability for a unit in combat with this unit. And very simply, on a 3-up, the command or rampage ability has no effect. It still counts as having been used, and any command points spent to use it are lost. That one's going to depend on how many rampages or debilitating, commands that are happening to units that you are in combat with, but it is interesting. Anything that can put your opponent on tilt is potentially really good. And the last one here is Beacon of Azir. Once per battle in any hero phase, pick a friendly visible Stormcast Eternals wizard or priest wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. And the effect is, the next time this turn that the target uses a prayer or spell ability, instead of making a casting roll or a chanting roll for them, you can use a value of 7 for that roll, and it cannot be modified. After that ability is resolved, if the target has any ritual points, reset their ritual points to 0. And there's a designer's note here. Ritual points apply modifiers, so cannot be used with this ability to increase the chanting roll to more than 7. So what we have here is an interesting one, because the hero who has this in no way needs to be the wizard or priest, but they just have to be near one. So if you have a minor hero who's kind of in a entourage or whatever, you could also give it to a wizard. They could just pick themselves. But what you're essentially doing is taking out the casting roll and saying the value is 7. You cannot change that with your ritual points that are stacked up, and you lose any ritual points that you did have stacked up if you choose to do this. But solid's a pretty 7 number for most of the spells that these guys would actively be wanting to use. So while this isn't the artifact that I would necessarily go to, if you are someone who, you're in a lot of those crux moments where this spell just needs to go off kind of a thing, it's really good. Now keep in mind though that you are locked into 7 with no modifiers, so now your opponent, when they go to unbind, only has to roll an 8 to shut it down, unless it's related to a prayer, which in case it can't. But you understand what I'm saying. There's some caveats there. Now moving on to the Warscrolls, unlike the Skaven, who got 2, they got the Screaming Bell and the Brood Terror. We really just have Iridian the Witness, or Iridan. I'm sorry, I've always gotten that wrong, even in their lore video. And Iridan is a very interesting character. So currently, it is sort of this weird mix of combat and buff pieces, but it just doesn't have the oomph as a unit in terms of its ability to attack or buff that makes it like a standout in any one of those categories. Almost like it's trying to do a little bit too much as a singular war scroll. And so we get this new iteration of Iridan. Oh my god. So here we go. You have a 12-inch move, a 6-up ward with a 3-up save, so that's great. 5 control and 12 health. It's a good, cavalry size, beefy hero. Iriden's weapons here has the Axe of the Final Threshold, crit mortals, and has 4 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, 2 rend, and 3 damage. If I'm not mistaken, it used to be D3 damage. They just made it a flat 3, which is awesome. Ariax, the mount, has the plunging talons. They have a charge bonus, +1 damage, and they are, of course, companion weapons. 6 attacks, 4s to hit, 2s to wound, 2 rend, and 2 damage. Now, the abilities here are night and day different. I mean, they're just totally different. There were no copy-pastes. So let's go through them one by one. We have 4 to talk about. The first one is passive, the Flames of Hope. You can re-roll resistance rolls for friendly Ruination Chamber units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this unit. The resistance rolls to be able to turn off core abilities and stuff like that is wonderful. So this absolutely magnifies the stuff that they can do on the tabletop, and quite frankly is a rule befitting one of the leaders of the Ruination Chamber. So yeah, next ability here is Guardian of the Final Threshold. Once per turn, it's a reaction, and it's when this unit was picked to be the target of a non-core ability. This is Iriden's resistance roll, so make a resistance roll of d6, and on a 3-up, that ability has no effect. Again, wonderful stuff. Now, Iriden does have a prayer, which is really cool. It goes off on a 3, and it's called Demands of the Witness. Declare, pick a visible, friendly Ruination Chamber unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target and make a chanting roll of d6. Until the start of your next turn, add 1 to the rend characteristic of the target's melee weapons. If the chanting roll was a 7 or more, you can pick another eligible unit to be a second target. Remember, you have a new artifact that if any minor hero is standing next to Iriden, can go, Iriden, I'm a beacon of light, and let them auto do a 7, so you can automatically do 2 units in an important turn, is what I'm saying. Now, adding 1 to what is undeniably one of the more popular units of the Stormcast battle tome, and honestly, one of the poster units, I guess you could say, of the new edition. I like it. I'm here for it. I want something similar for Liberators, but I will take it because this is highly thematic for what Iriden is doing and the forces that they're bringing. And lastly, here is a rampage, and it's called On Wings of Death. And this one I think is very interesting. Pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. Roll a dice, and on a 3-up, you can remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield within 1 inch of the target. If the target charged this turn, subtract 1 from hit rolls for the target's attacks for the rest of the turn. Again, it's a rampage. So what this is like the preternatural speed of Ariax is giving it a chance to like duck and weave, shoot up into the sky, basically try to get out of the way. But since you just have to be within 1 inch of the unit, this can actually give Iriden quite a bit of board presence. Just, I mean, as an extreme example, say 40 clan rats jump into her. Well, Ariax is gonna just hop up into the sky and come down inside somewhere else on the flank, and because the footprint of that unit is so big, staying within 1 inch of it means you have quite a bit of options when it comes to where they land. All in all, I think this is a wonderful addition. Iriden is a really cool character, and I'm glad to see that they are still getting support. You know what I mean? Like, just new ways of looking at the same thing. How can we try to buff Ruination Chamber stuff in a different way? So let's do some takeaways from all of this. What can we confidently say? As I was looking at a few of these different updates coming out, I will say the ones that interest me the most are the ones that have battle formations. And that's partially because I look at battle formations as really the crux of army building. To me, it's the first lens you hit when you talk about what you want your flavor of your faction to be. And so when you say, like, I want to play Stormcast, the way that you go about, assembling an army, or the things that you lean into, whether it's the dragons or the Ruination Chamber stuff, it should be the lens, at least the first one, that you start using to define what you want this faction to do and what stories you want them to tell. So I'm a little bit bummed that there's none of that there, but that's okay, because I can confidently say I actually busted out my battle tome last night. I was reading in bed. I was like, yeah, I always just go with like Staunch Defender, but what are the other ones? They just are not standouts. I think between all the options here, my 2 picks are definitely going to be Legendary Tenacity. That's when your hero can come back to life for a little bit and try to fight a little bit more. I think that fits in perfectly with a lot of the stories we see in the Stormcast books. And then the second one, Hour of Glory, where it's their finest hour every hour on the hour, and they just get to keep running forward. And the addition of a control buff to that is very interesting, because now you can just focus on that hero getting to an objective. And once they're there, you're not obligated to keep using finest hour, but it becomes, your little wrecking ball to get to the objective and claim it with confidence. I do adore the fact that Illidan stays relevant. Games Workshop has a history of these minor heroes sometimes going the way of Astria Soulbright, where she got eaten by Usharan. They kind of just fade away, but this was I think a very solid attempt to say, we want this hero to be here. They have a specific role in the faction, that being a frontline support piece, because Illidan can fight. They have a killer axe, but also is, I think, much more now than before an effective force multiplier for Ruination Chamber stuff, which thematically they should. So I'm honestly pretty happy about that. My overall consensus here is that for an army that shows up consistently at events and has a fairly, I think, dependable win ratio, meaning like they're not in a bad place. They weren't like dying and just needed some units to be pulled way up to be able to salvage this whole faction, nor do they have any like specific I would say battle tome bending problems, meaning like Flesh Eater Courts really depend on Usharan. There's nothing quite like that. Tournament lists, a lot of them feature Karazai, but I think it's fair to say that it's not like the army doesn't function without him. So for those reasons, I'm very happy. I think the heroic traits are really the winners here, because that is, I think, the weakest part of their battle tome, which is so funny to me, because the whole point is that these are the heroes, and your heroic traits are like, if you land this turn, people are a little bit worse at hitting you. Like, well, come on, give me something cool. And I do think these two match specifically. The Sigil of Morda is a really cool artifact if you're looking for other stuff to shut down abilities to kind of go with your Ruination Chamber theme of debuffing your opponent. Whether or not it's better than the Mirror Shield, that's up to debate, but I will say I do think there's a little bit of play for the Banner of Sigmar, which lets you steal an objective if your opponent doesn't actively have a model on it. So I'm going to give it a thumb up. It doesn't radically change the playstyle, but it does give some fun options that I am certainly going to enjoy as I build up my Stormcast Eternals in preparation for this coming season. If you are a Stormcast player, please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm so excited to hear about it. Thank you all so much for watching, listening, and if you wouldn't mind sharing these videos with folks, because I'm just trying to get a lot more views on them. I'm working real hard to get this stuff out in time, and it would just mean the world to me. So thank you all so much for watching, and happy warging.